What would you do if the person you trusted most was secretly blocking every door to your freedom? This is the story of Lewis and Anna Smith, a couple who looked perfect from the outside but were drowning in silence on the inside. Lewis was the kind of man everyone admired. Sharp suits, firm handshakes, a smile that could sell ice to a polar bear. He ran a successful consulting firm, drove a nice car, and never missed his son's school events. Neighbors called him a role model. Friends asked him for advice. His wife, Anna, stood beside him at every event, graceful and smiling. To the world, they had it all. But perfection is just a mask we wear when we're too afraid to show the cracks underneath. Anna wasn't always quiet. Years ago, before marriage, before motherhood, she had fire in her eyes. She was a rising marketing coordinator with dreams bigger than her paycheck. She loved strategy, creativity, problem-solving. Her boss once told her she had a gift for seeing what others missed. But then came love. Then came a wedding. Then came a baby. And with each blessing, a little piece of Anna's world got smaller. Lewis didn't force her to quit her job outright. He was too smart for that. Instead, he planted seeds. The baby needs you. Daycare is full of germs. What kind of mother chooses work over her child? And slowly, those seeds grew into walls. Now, 5 years later, Anna spent her days wiping counters, folding laundry, and pretending she didn't hear the voice inside her head screaming for more. She loved her son, Caleb, more than breath itself. But love and loss can live in the same heart. Every time she scrolled past a job posting, her chest tightened. Every time Lewis came home talking about his latest deal, she felt invisible. She tried to bring it up once. "Maybe I could go back part-time," she said over dinner. Lewis didn't even look up from his plate. "We've talked about this, Anna. Caleb needs stability. You'd just stress yourself out for no reason." And that was the end of the conversation. It always was. But Lewis didn't just dismiss her dreams. He sabotaged them. When Anna applied for a remote position at a design agency, the hiring manager never called back. Weeks later, Anna discovered why. Lewis had contacted the company, claiming to be her husband and explaining that she wasn't actually available due to family obligations. When Anna found out, she confronted him. He didn't deny it. "I was protecting you," he said calmly. "You're not thinking clearly. You'd burn out in a month." Anna stared at him, searching for the man she'd married. But all she saw was a stranger wearing his face. The breaking point came on a warm Thursday afternoon. Anna's best friend, Laura, knocked on the door unannounced. Laura was the opposite of Anna in every way: bold, loud, unapologetic. She'd moved across the country 2 years ago, chasing a career opportunity that everyone said was risky. Now she worked as a regional sales director, independent and thriving. The moment Anna opened the door, Laura knew something was wrong. They sat in the kitchen, coffee growing cold between them. "You look tired," Laura said. Anna forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just busy with Caleb and the house." Laura leaned forward. "Anna, when's the last time you did something for you?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Anna's throat tightened. "I don't know." Laura didn't push, not at first. They talked about old memories, mutual friends, Caleb's latest drawings. But as the afternoon stretched on, the walls Anna had built around herself began to crack. "I feel stuck," she finally whispered. "I love my family, but I don't recognize myself anymore. I used to have goals. I used to matter." Laura reached across the table and gripped her hand. "You still matter, Anna. But you've given Lewis all the power. And power in the wrong hands always becomes control." Anna tried to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, she knew Laura was right. Before Laura left, she said something that would change everything. "Dependence is dangerous, Anna. What happens if life turns upside down? What happens if Lewis loses his job? What happens if he leaves? You'd have nothing. No income, no recent experience, no safety net. You're one bad day away from being trapped." Anna wanted to defend Lewis, to insist he'd never let them fall. But she couldn't. Because somewhere in the back of her mind, fear had already been growing. That night, after Lewis fell asleep, Anna sat in the dark living room, staring at her phone. Laura's words echoed in her head like a drumbeat. One bad day. One bad day. One bad day. She opened her laptop and started searching. Graphic design courses. Freelance platforms. Success stories of women who rebuilt their lives from scratch. She didn't sleep that night. And by dawn, she'd made a decision that would set everything in motion. She enrolled in an online graphic design bootcamp, using a credit card Louis didn't monitor. She'd learn in secret. She'd build skills in silence. And when the time was right, she'd step into the light as someone new. Someone who couldn't be controlled. Someone who couldn't be erased. Louis noticed nothing. Why would he? He was too busy being right, too busy running his business, too busy believing his way was the only way. He kissed Anna on the forehead each morning and told her she was doing a great job. He had no idea that his wife was no longer the woman he thought he knew. Anna worked late at night after Caleb went to bed. She studied while Louis watched television. She practiced design layouts during nap time. And slowly, week by week, she got better. Her first freelance gig paid $40. Her second paid $100. By month 3, she had steady clients. And for the first time in years, Anna felt something she'd almost forgotten. Power. But secrets have a way of growing. And storms always come when you least expect them. Because while Anna was building a future in the shadows, Louis was walking straight into his own destruction. And when everything fell apart, the question wouldn't be who was stronger. It would be who could survive the fall. So here's what I want you to think about. If someone you loved was quietly cutting your wings, would you even notice before it was too late? Anna's secret was growing faster than she could control, and Louis's world was about to come crashing down in ways neither of them could imagine. 6 months had passed since that conversation with Laura, and Anna was no longer the same woman. Every night after Louis fell asleep, she transformed. The tired housewife disappeared, and in her place sat a designer with hungry eyes and steady hands. Her laptop screen glowed in the darkness like a portal to another world. A world where she mattered. Where her ideas had value. Where she wasn't just someone's wife or someone's mother. She was Anna Smith, freelance graphic designer, and business was booming. Her client list had grown from one-off projects to monthly retainers. A local coffee shop hired her to redesign their entire brand. A startup paid her $1,500 for a logo package. Then came the big one. A contact from her old marketing days reached out with an opportunity that made her hands shake. The design team for an NBA franchise needed fresh talent for their promotional materials. They'd seen her portfolio online. They wanted her. The pay was more than Louis knew she'd ever made in her previous career. And she said yes without hesitation. But success tastes different when you have to hide it. Anna opened a separate bank account, paperless statements only. She told Louis the extra money came from her parents helping out. He never questioned it because his ego wouldn't allow him to think his wife was capable of earning that kind of income on her own. Every deposit felt like a small revolution. Every client meeting during Caleb's preschool hours felt like stolen freedom. And every night she closed her laptop, slipped back into bed beside Louis, and pretended to be the woman he thought she was. She felt the distance between them growing like a canyon neither of them could see. Meanwhile, Louis was building his own kind of secret, but his was made of quicksand and lies. It started at a business mixer downtown. A sharply dressed man named Derek Hughes approached Louis with a handshake that lasted too long and a smile that showed too many teeth. "I've heard about you," Derek said, handing Louis a business card with embossed gold letters. "You're the kind of forward-thinking guy who knows opportunity when he sees it." Louis felt the hook sink in immediately. Derek talked about investment returns that sounded too good to be true. Cryptocurrency mining operations. Real estate flips with guaranteed profits. Partnerships with overseas manufacturers who could cut costs by 70%. Louis saw dollar signs. He saw expansion. He saw himself becoming the success story everyone would talk about for years. He didn't see the trap. Anna noticed the change first. Louis started coming home later, eyes bright with excitement, talking about deals and partnerships and early retirement. He threw around numbers that made her stomach turn. "We're talking 7 figures within 18 months, he said one night, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. This is the break we've been waiting for. Anna set down the dish she was washing. Louis, have you had anyone look at the contracts? A lawyer? An accountant? He waved her off like she was a child asking silly questions. I've been in business for 15 years, Anna. I know how to read a contract. She tried again, softer this time, choosing her words carefully. I'm not doubting you. I just think maybe a second opinion. Louis cut her off, his voice sharp. Why do you always do this? Why can't you just support me for once instead of looking for problems? Anna went quiet. Because that's what she'd learned to do. Stay quiet. Keep the peace. Let Louis be right, even when every instinct screamed that he was wrong. Over the next 3 months, Louis poured everything into Derek's ventures. He withdrew from their savings. He took out a line of credit against their house. He convinced 2 of his own consulting clients to invest alongside him, promising returns they'd never forget. Anna watched it happen like a slow-motion car crash. She asked questions. She expressed concerns. But every time, Louis shut her down with the same arrogance that had always defined him. You don't understand business, Anna. This is how wealth is built. This is how we secure Caleb's future. And Anna, trapped between fear and habit, said nothing more. But she did something Louis never expected. She started saving more aggressively. Every dollar from her design work went into her secret account. Because Laura's words still echoed in her mind. One bad day away from being trapped. And Anna could feel that bad day coming like a storm on the horizon. The crash came on a Tuesday morning. Louis's phone rang at 6:15, and Anna heard his voice change from groggy to panicked in seconds. He was out of bed, pacing, shouting into the phone. What do you mean frozen? What do you mean investigation? Anna sat up, her heart hammering. Louis's face had gone gray. When he finally hung up, he just stood there, staring at nothing. Louis. Anna's voice was barely a whisper. He turned to her, and for the first time in their marriage, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. It's gone, he said. All of it. The investment was a scam. Derek Hughes wasn't even his real name. The company didn't exist. The overseas partners were fake. The bank accounts had been emptied overnight. Federal investigators were involved. And Louis, along with everyone he'd convinced to invest, had lost everything. The savings account, drained. The house, now at risk because of the credit line. His reputation, shattered because his clients were demanding their money back, threatening lawsuits, cutting all ties. In one phone call, Louis went from successful businessman to broke, humiliated, and legally vulnerable. The man who came home that night wasn't the man who'd left that morning. Louis moved through the house like a ghost. He didn't eat, didn't speak, just sat in his office with the lights off, staring at his computer screen. Anna wanted to say, "I told you so." Part of her wanted to scream it. But instead, she made dinner, put Caleb to bed, and sat across from her husband in the dark living room, waiting for him to say something. Anything. Finally, he spoke. I don't know what to do. His voice cracked. Anna had never heard him sound so small. We'll figure it out, she said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. Louis looked at her, his eyes red. How? We have maybe 2 months before we can't pay the mortgage. My business is finished. No one will work with me now. It's over, Anna. Everything I built is over. And in that moment, the power shifted. Because Anna had something Louis didn't. Options. Income. A future that didn't depend on his approval. But she didn't tell him. Not yet. Weeks passed, and Louis sank deeper into himself. He refused to look for traditional work. I'm not going to flip burgers or stock shelves, he said bitterly. I'm a consultant. I built something. Anna bit her tongue. Because the man who'd told her she didn't need to work, who'd blocked her opportunities, who'd insisted his way was the only way, was now too proud to do what needed to be done. Meanwhile, the bills kept coming. The mortgage. The car payments. Caleb's preschool tuition. And somehow, mysteriously, they kept getting paid. Louis noticed but didn't understand. Did your parents send more money? He asked one evening. Anna nodded, keeping her eyes on her phone. It was easier to lie than to explain. But Louis wasn't stupid, just broken. And broken men asked dangerous questions. It started with small things. Anna's phone buzzing with notifications at odd hours. Her laptop always angled away from him. The way she'd excuse herself to take calls in another room. Louis's suspicion grew like poison. Who was helping them? Where was the money really coming from? Was Anna seeing someone? Had she given up on him and found someone successful, someone who wasn't a failure? The thoughts consumed him. One afternoon, while Anna was out grocery shopping, Louis did something he'd never done before. He went through her things. Her laptop was password protected, but her notebook wasn't. Inside, he found everything. Client names, project notes, invoice copies, payment records. And at the top of one page, in Anna's handwriting, NBA promotional contract, final payment received, $12,000. Louis stood there, staring at the words like they were written in a foreign language. Anna had a career. A successful one. And she'd hidden it from him for months. Maybe longer. When Anna came home, Louis was sitting at the kitchen table, her notebook open in front of him. Her stomach dropped. "Louis." He held up a hand. "Don't." His voice was cold. "How long?" Anna set down the grocery bags slowly. 8 months. Louis laughed, but there was no humor in it. 8 months. You've been lying to me for 8 months. Anna felt anger rising in her chest, hot and sharp. I wasn't lying. I was surviving. Louis stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. Surviving? By going behind my back. By making me look like a fool in my own house. Anna's voice rose to match his. You made yourself look like a fool, Louis. I tried to warn you. I tried to tell you that investment was risky. But you didn't listen because you never listen. The words hung between them like a grenade with a pin pulled. Louis's face twisted. So this is my fault? I lose everything trying to provide for this family, and you've been secretly playing businesswoman, keeping money from me. Anna cut him off, her voice shaking with years of suppressed rage. Keeping money from you? You mean the money I earned? The career you tried to destroy? The opportunities you literally sabotaged because you couldn't handle the idea of me being anything other than your housewife. The fight that followed was the kind that breaks things permanently. Words were said that couldn't be taken back. Louis called her disobedient, sneaky, selfish. Anna called him controlling, arrogant, and threatened to leave. Caleb heard them from upstairs and started crying. And in that moment, both of them realized how far they'd fallen. When the shouting stopped, Louis grabbed his keys. I need to leave, he said quietly. Anna didn't stop him. She watched him walk out the door, heard his car start, and then stood alone in the kitchen wondering if her marriage had just ended. But beneath the fear and sadness, there was something else. Something she hadn't felt in years. Relief. Because the secret was out. The roles had reversed. And for the first time, Louis was the one with nothing, and Anna was the one holding all the cards. The question wasn't whether she'd help him climb back up. The question was whether he'd finally be humble enough to accept the hand she'd been reaching out all along. Because here's what I need you to understand. When someone spends years making you feel small, and then life makes them small instead, you have a choice. Do you get revenge, or do you show them what grace actually looks like? Anna was about to make that choice. And Louis was about to learn what it feels like to need someone you once controlled. But forgiveness doesn't come cheap. And pride doesn't die easy. So what happens when the person who took everything from you suddenly needs everything from you? Do you save them, or do you let them drown? The question wasn't whether Anna would forgive Louis. The question was whether Louis would finally become a man worth forgiving. 3 days passed after Louis walked out, and the house felt different. Quieter, but not peaceful. The kind of quiet that comes after an explosion, when you're still checking to see what survived. Anna went through the motions. She made breakfast for Caleb, worked on her design projects, paid the bills that kept them afloat. But at night, when Caleb was asleep and the house settled into darkness, she'd sit by the window and wonder if Louis was coming back. Part of her hoped he would. Part of her hoped he wouldn't. Because sometimes the hardest thing about loving someone is knowing when to let them go and when to fight for what's left. And Anna didn't know which path she was on anymore. Louis, meanwhile, was living in a cheap motel off the highway, the kind of place with stained carpets and lights that flickered when trucks drove past. He'd gone from a 4-bedroom house to a room that smelled like cigarettes and regret. His phone was full of missed calls from lawyers, former clients, and his own parents asking what happened. He ignored them all. Because how do you explain that you destroyed everything through arrogance? How do you admit that you treated your wife like a child and your instincts like gospel, only to discover you were wrong about everything that mattered? Louis stared at himself in the cracked bathroom mirror and barely recognized the man looking back. His eyes were hollow. His shoulders slumped. The confidence that once defined him had evaporated like water on hot pavement. And in that crushing silence, something inside him finally broke open. Not his spirit. His pride. It happened on the 4th night. Louis sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at his phone, scrolling through old photos. Anna laughing at their wedding. Anna holding newborn Caleb in the hospital. Anna beside him at a company dinner, smiling even though he'd spent the whole night ignoring her to talk business with colleagues. He saw it clearly now, the pattern he'd been blind to for years. Every decision made without her input. Every dream of hers he'd dismissed. Every door he'd closed because he convinced himself he was protecting her when really, he was just protecting his control. The truth hit him like a punch to the chest. He hadn't been a provider. He'd been a prison guard. And Anna had spent years quietly digging a tunnel to freedom while he stood watch, too arrogant to notice she was already gone. Louis picked up his phone and called the one person who'd never sugarcoated anything in his life. His older brother, Marcus. Marcus answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. "It's midnight, Louis." "What's wrong?" Louis's voice cracked. "Everything. Everything's wrong." And for the next hour, Louis told him everything. The scam, the financial collapse, the fight with Anna, the 8 months she'd been working in secret. When he finished, Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something Louis would never forget. "So let me get this straight. Your wife, who you told couldn't handle the stress of working, built a whole career while keeping your family from going under after you gambled everything on a con man. And you're mad at her." Louis opened his mouth to defend himself, but nothing came out. Marcus continued, his voice firm but not unkind. "Louis, you've been a control freak since we were kids. Everything had to be your way. But life doesn't work like that, man. And marriage definitely doesn't work like that. Anna didn't betray you. She survived you. Now the question is, are you going to keep being the man who needs to control everything, or are you going to become the man who deserves a woman like her?" The words settled over Louis like a heavy blanket. And for the first time since everything fell apart, he didn't make excuses. He didn't blame bad luck or bad people. He just sat there in that dingy motel room and let himself feel the full weight of what he'd done. The next morning, Louis started moving differently. Not with the confident swagger he used to have, but with something quieter. Something that looked like humility. He called Anna and asked if they could talk. Not at the house. Somewhere neutral. She agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near Caleb's preschool. When Anna walked in, Louis barely recognized the woman approaching him. She wore confidence like perfume. Her shoulders were back. Her eyes clear. This wasn't the tired, uncertain woman he'd left behind. This was someone who'd tasted freedom and wasn't going to give it up. They sat across from each other, and for a moment, neither spoke. Louis broke the silence first. "I'm sorry." Anna stirred her coffee, not looking at him. "For what, specifically?" Louis took a breath. "For everything. For making you feel small. For sabotaging your career. For treating you like you didn't know what you needed when the truth is, I was the one who didn't have a clue." Anna finally looked up, searching his face for the lie, the manipulation, the same old Louis hiding behind different words. But she didn't find it. What she found instead was something she'd never seen before. Genuine remorse. Louis continued, his voice steady but raw. "You were right about the investment. You were right about me needing to listen. You were right about everything, and I was too proud to hear it. And when I found out about your work, my first thought wasn't pride or gratitude. It was shame. Because you proved that I was wrong about you. And being wrong meant I had to admit I've been wrong about a lot of things for a very long time. Anna felt her throat tighten. She'd imagined this conversation 100 times, imagined herself staying cold, staying strong, making him beg. But sitting there, looking at the broken man across from her, all she felt was tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of hiding. Tired of living in a marriage where power mattered more than partnership. Louis, I don't need an apology. I need change. Real change. Because I'm not going back to who I was. I can't. Louis nodded. I don't want you to. I want you to keep being exactly who you are now. And I want to figure out how to be someone who supports that instead of someone who fights it. Anna leaned back, arms crossed. That sounds good. But words are easy. What are you actually going to do? It was the question Louis had been asking himself since Marcus's call. And he had an answer. Over the next 2 weeks, Louis did something he'd never done before. He got humble. He went to a job placement agency and took the first position they offered, a customer service role at a logistics company. 9 to 5. Hourly pay. A cubicle instead of a corner office. The kind of work he'd once called beneath him. But he showed up every day, on time, and did the job without complaint. Because pride doesn't feed your family. And ego doesn't pay the mortgage. His coworkers had no idea who he used to be, and that was fine with him. For the first time in his adult life, Louis was just another guy trying to make ends meet. And strangely, there was freedom in that. No reputation to protect. No image to maintain. Just work, paycheck, survive, repeat. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And honesty was something Louis was learning to value. At home, things shifted slowly. Louis moved back in after 3 weeks, but the dynamic was different. He didn't walk through the door expecting dinner on the table and a quiet house. He asked Anna about her day first. He helped with Caleb's homework. He did laundry without being asked. And when Anna had client calls, he took Caleb to the park so she could work in peace. It felt awkward at first, like learning to dance with someone after years of stepping on their toes. But gradually, they found a rhythm. Anna noticed the changes but didn't celebrate them out loud. Because she'd learned the hard way that people can perform change without actually becoming different. She needed time. She needed proof. And Louis understood that. He didn't ask for forgiveness on a timeline. He just kept showing up differently, day after day, until the new version of himself became the real version. One evening, about 2 months after Louis came back, they were sitting on the couch after Caleb went to bed. Anna was working on a logo design, and Louis was reviewing budgets on his laptop. The TV played quietly in the background. It was ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of moment that doesn't make stories but makes marriages. Louis closed his laptop and looked at Anna. "Can I ask you something?" Anna glanced up. "Sure." Louis hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Why did you take me back? After everything I did, after everything I said, why didn't you just leave?" Anna saved her work and set her laptop aside. She thought about the question, really thought about it, because she'd asked herself the same thing 100 times. Finally, she answered. "Because I didn't want Caleb growing up thinking that when things get hard, you run. And I didn't want to look back and wonder if we could have made it if I'd just given you a real chance to change. But Louis, let me be very clear. I didn't take you back because I needed you. I took you back because I chose you. And there's a difference. Need makes you desperate. Choice makes you powerful. I'm here because I want to be, not because I have to be. And the day that changes, I'm gone." Louis nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "I understand. And I'm grateful. Not just for the second chance, but for everything you've done to keep us afloat. You saved this family, Anna. Not me. You." It was the first time he'd said it out loud, the first time he'd acknowledged that the roles had completely reversed. And saying it didn't make him feel weak. It made him feel free. 6 months later, things looked different for the Smith family. Louis had been promoted to a supervisor role at the logistics company. It wasn't consulting, and it wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and stability mattered now in ways it never had before. Anna's design business had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. She'd hired a part-time assistant and was fielding offers from clients across the country. The NBA contract led to more sports teams, which led to corporate brands, which led to her name being whispered in creative circles as someone to watch. She'd even been invited to speak on a panel about women rebuilding careers after motherhood. Lewis sat in the audience that day, watching his wife on stage, answering questions with the confidence of someone who'd earned every word she spoke. And he felt something he'd never associated with Anna before. Pride. Not the condescending kind. The real kind. The kind that says, "I'm lucky to know you." Their marriage wasn't perfect. They still argued. Lewis still struggled with control issues, old habits that surfaced when stress ran high. Anna still wrestled with resentment that flared up when she remembered the years she'd lost. But they'd learned something crucial. A relationship isn't about one person being right and the other being obedient. It's about two people choosing each other again and again, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. They'd learned to talk without weapons. To disagree without destruction. To build something new from the rubble of what broke. And maybe that was the real story all along. Not about who had power, but about what you do when power stops mattering. So here's what I want to leave you with. Life has a way of humbling everyone eventually. The question is, what will you do when your turn comes? Will you cling to pride and lose everything that matters? Or will you let go, fall to your knees, and discover that sometimes the ground is exactly where you need to be to finally see clearly? Lewis and Anna figured it out. But maybe you're standing at your own crossroads right now. Maybe you're the one holding too tight. Or maybe you're the one being held down. Either way, change is possible. Growth is possible. But only if you're brave enough to admit you were wrong and humble enough to start over. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to completely rebuild a relationship from the ground up? What did it teach you? And if you found the story valuable, hit that like button and subscribe, because we bring you real stories about real families navigating the messy, beautiful, complicated journey of staying together when everything tries to pull you apart. Thanks for listening. And remember, the tables always turn. The only question is whether you'll be ready when they do.